Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be answering the question, will Golisopod still be good after rotation? We've been doing a little series of these. We've looked at Buzzwole, Zoroark, and Gardevoir. I will put links to all of those videos in the description. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, the focus is on Golisopod, a video which has been requested by some of you lovely ladies and gentlemen. And since you all ask so politely and follow the rule to be nice, would be rude of me not to do so. So having a quick look at Golisopod then, what we see is a Pokemon with 210 HP, which is pretty good. A very annoying retreat cost of 3, more on that as we go through. A weakness to fire, which is not too bad at the moment. And the ability to do 120 for just a single energy as long as it became active this turn. Now, you add a double colourless and you can do 100 damage, reducing damage done to you by 20 the next turn, or 150 and switch to the bench, which with a choice band then goes up to 180, which has in the past been getting stuff like Tapu Lele, but could potentially be getting stuff like Rayquaza moving forward, which would be pretty cool. So, what's it actually losing? And when we're looking at post-rotation, we need to look at what it's losing and what it might be gaining and any kind of counters that might be cropping up against it. And there is one gigantic, huge loss that it's going to be losing as we move into next format, and that's Floatstone. You see, the thing about Golisopod is that it's got to come active every turn. If it stays in the active, your only choices are to do 30 damage, which is not good, or add a double colourless energy, at which point you can then do 100, reducing damage done by 20, which is fine, but it's not actually as much damage, and sometimes you don't want to use it. You need to get a new Golisopod in the active every turn, and one thing that you've been able to do since Golisopod came out in Burning Shadows is just whack a Floatstone on there, and then just retreat and be retreating between two Golisopod in order to keep doing 120 with each. Yeah, you give up Choice Band and the ability to do the extra damage with that, but it's really not the worst thing ever. We've all gone through this. It could be a lot worse. And don't get me wrong, we've got other options, yeah? We've still got Ace Roller, and we've still got Guzma. But the point is, they're supporters for the turn. We don't always want to be using those. Yeah, sure, we can play something like a switch, but if you play a switch, you've got to draw the switch at the exact right time, or else you're not going to be able to use it, whereas a Floatstone just sits there on the Pokemon, ready to be used whenever. Yes, a Field Blower could come out and get rid of it, but it forces your opponent to have the Field Blower, whereas if you're just rocking along with a Floatstone, if your opponent doesn't get the Field Blower, you win. Switch, like I say, your opponent has to draw into it at the exact right time. It is, to be perfectly blunt, far from ideal. And it's losing that ability to switch often with Floatstone, which is going to hurt Golisopod more than anything. Because if you're using stuff like Guzma and Ace Roller, what you're going to really need is some kind of draw engine, because if you're using your supporters to not draw cards, then you're going to need another way to draw cards. And we're losing Octillery. Octillery is going away. Now, this is often played with Zoroark, and if you're playing a Zoroark build, then you're absolutely fine. You can still use Zoroark. But it reduces the ability to do other things. You're also losing both Mewtwo from Evolutions and Mew EX. These were very widely played in Golisopod decks, because you could use either of them for a double colourless energy, and it would allow you to get a one-hit KO on a Buzzwole. Now, to be fair, the Mewtwo from Evolutions isn't the biggest loss ever, because we've got the new Deoxys attack form coming in Celestial Storm, which literally has the same attack. Double colourless energy, 20 damage plus 20 for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. But you're losing Mew EX, and Mew EX really was a very, very nice counter for this. Losing it is going to have an issue. Might not be the worst thing ever, because you've still got other options, but you're losing one of your best options, and that is a little bit sad. You're also losing Parallel City. You see, one of the things about Golisopod is it doesn't do the most damage ever. but it doesn't need to do the most damage ever, because you do 120 every turn, and there's an element of disruption. You stop your opponent getting one-hit KOs. Limiting their bench with Parallel City was one of the things that you would do on a regular basis in order to do this, and now all of a sudden that option's gone away. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little bit sad. Again, I'm not saying you can't work around this, but I am saying that losing Parallel City and the disruption that it brings sucks. Now, you've still got Zoroark. Zoroark will still remain probably the best partner for Golisopod, but Puzzle of Time is rotating, and as we said recently, it's going to be banned in the expanded format. I'll pop a link to that video in the description. And losing Puzzle of Time sucks. I went and had a look at the top list, the Zoroark Golisopod list for the North American International Championships. It was Jimmy Pendarvis who actually came in third place in the largest Pokemon tournament ever, only played 2 Floatstone. How can you get away with only playing 2 Floatstone after everything that I'm saying? Because you've got Puzzle of Time and Zoroark. So you can use Puzzle of Time to get Floatstone back, or you can use it to get Ace Roller back, or whatever. Your options are near limitless. But losing Puzzle of Time and losing Floatstone might be a little bit too much. The other partner we often saw with Golisopod was Garbodor. And yes, you're still keeping the Garbodor that does lots of damage for a single energy, the one from Guardians Rising, but we're losing the ability locking Garbodor. And that sucks. Because like I've said, you're not doing quite enough damage. This is a very much 2-hit KO with healing and disruption kind of Pokemon. You use Ace Roller as often as you can while using stuff like Parallel City and Garbodor to slow your opponent down to the point that you can afford to use this strategy. Well, if you're not able to use Garbodor anymore, and you're losing Parallel City, that basically means you can't play Golisopod Garbodor. And if you played straight Golisopod, you'd need to play it with Octillery, so you could afford to be using non-draw supporters like Ace Roller and Guzma without drawing nothing and losing the game. So straight Golisopod is probably out unless we get a better draw engine. Although in the not too distant future we are getting the Zebstrika that once per turn discard your hand, draw 4 cards. That might actually save Golisopod as a solo deck because you play it with Zebstrika as opposed to playing it with Octillery. Although Golisopod Octillery's never been the best version of it. So to recap, with Zoroark, it's still, I think, going to be viable, but losing Floatstone and Puzzle of Time is really going to hurt. On its own, without Floatstone and Octillery, just don't even bother. And with Garbodor, you're losing the ability locking Garbodor, which means you're losing the deck. This is not looking particularly good at the moment, because even the version that's staying with Zoroark has huge losses. And actually, in terms of counters, it's not looking particularly great either. Because, okay, Ho-Oh's the only really good fire deck at the moment. That's staying around, but that'll get a one-hit KO with a choice band even if you're not weak, so it doesn't really matter. But we're getting a couple of Victini in the near future. We're getting Victini Prism Star. Victini Prism Star does 20 damage for each basic energy in your discard pile, and then it puts all that basic energy back into your deck. And it can be used for a counter energy. You should expect to see this. Even if it's just in a fire deck, it's going to put the prize trade out of your favour, and that's going to suck. But we're also getting another Victini that for a fire and a colourless energy does 20 damage for each of your basic Pokemon in play, which again can be used for just a counter energy. And these Victini will be very, very good, very, very easy counters to Golisopod. So, it's going to be easier to counter, and it's losing most of its variants. There is still potential for Golisopod to be good with Zoroark, but the fact that you're losing both Floatstone and Puzzle of Time, and we're not getting a good replacement, right? We're getting a Skateboard, which brings your retreat cost down to 2. Not even down to 1, down to 2. Even if you could have a retreat cost of 1, you could just attach a grass retreat, etc. But you've not even got that option. I think some people are still going to play Golisopod Zoroark after rotation, but I think it is really going to be a significantly worse deck, And that's before we even mention stuff like Rayquaza coming along that can get pretty easy one-hit KOs. I don't think Golisopod's going to be great after rotation. That's not to say it won't be played, and that's not to say it won't see a lot of success, but whereas at the moment Zoroark Golisopod is still inarguably one of the best decks in the format, I don't see Golisopod being that relevant post-rotation. I don't think it's going to be as good, and it's largely because Floatstone is rotating. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about Golisopod, so do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. Do you think it's going to be good after rotation? Please let me know. And make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWafty, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.